Today we're doing chapter 6. Now, if you're looking at this video and you're thinking, hang on, he's wearing the same Wheezy Waiter t-shirt that he had on in the last 2 chapters, I do wash it, you know. Sometimes I also do several of these videos in a day, which is the case. I'm not wearing the same shirt multiple days in a row. That'd be gross. Chapter 6. James and Common hadn't bothered to go to the Jubilee, but Rebecca brought back pie, which they eagerly devoured. While they ate, she told them about Mrs. Burnham and the ladies at the pie table. "That woman deserves so much more respect than this town gives her," she said, wiping tears from her cheeks. "She's not the only one," said Common, patting his wife on the hand. James understood that his mother took more than her fair share of abuse, and part of that was his fault. Having a child born with a handicap of any kind was widely believed to be worthy punishment on the mother for some unnamed sin. It made people feel righteous, and few people are more cruel than those who believe themselves righteous. James appreciated the unkind treatment he received at the hands of the townsfolk due to the insight it gave him into human nature, but his mother, he knew, would have been happier without it. "So we'll make up the spare room for Grace, and she can stay with us as long as she likes," said Common. He was good, kind, and far too rare, which was why Rebecca had married him. Never before had a man failed so spectacularly to live up to his name as Common Lester. "But he is a little slow," Rebecca thought lovingly. "No, dear," she said. "She can't stay here. Folks aren't supposed to know she's ill. She has to stay at the schoolhouse." "Ah, right. Well, we'll just keep an eye on her." Common cleared away the plates and began washing them in the sink. "James," said Rebecca, "I know you've said that you're not walking to the Blood Pines, but it might be something to consider." James stared at her for a moment. "It wouldn't do any good, Ma. He's not going to want my help." Common looked back and forth between his wife and his son. They did this often, held conversations, and left half of it out. It made it impossible to keep up. Rebecca leaned forward and took her son's hand, turning it over, tracing the lines, noticing the calluses. "When it gets out that Grace is ill, she'll lose her job. He'll have to support the both of them. He's such an angry boy, but he's not as angry as he could be. If he knew now how much harder his life will be in a year or 2... James pulled his hand away. "I can't do anything about that. People will treat you how they see you. They'll only ever see him as a cripple. He'll always be a sad story to them. They'll never let him be anything else. No one will ever know what he really is." "Maybe. But doesn't he deserve to know what he really is?" Rebecca wasn't only talking about Parr. Even Common understood that. James walked to the door. He was visibly agitated. "Where are you going?" asked Common. "To finish the fence," said James, pulling the door shut hard behind him. Silence hung in the air as both parents stared at the closed door. "Do you think that's a good idea?" asked Common. "What's he gonna learn from a bunch of trees that aren't even there?" "It's not about the Blood Pines, Com. If there's something to learn, he'll find it. But it's never been about the Blood Pines." Common knew that, knew it better than anyone. But he took his wife's hand, silently thanking her for reminding him. James worked through the night. The moon was only a few days past full, so there was plenty of light. He dug post holes and cut all the posts. They could use some attention on the corners, but they were passable. Finishing was just a matter of dropping the posts into the holes, filling in the gaps, and setting the rails. He hadn't been entirely honest with his father that morning. There wasn't anything like a quarter-mile of fence to finish. Probably less than half of that. He hoisted several posts onto his shoulder and stomped along the fence line to where he had started to pile them up. He dumped them on the ground and went back for more, barely aware of what he was doing. More and more often he found himself so consumed with anger, though he rarely understood where it came from, that his body and mind became 2 separate objects, each completing a task independent of the other. What was she thinking, suggesting he take the walk? She had to know how meaningless it was. And going just to help Parley Burnham? That would rob the boy of the only glory left in the old tradition. If Parr were to make the walk, it wouldn't impress anyone. He couldn't prove it to anyone that he was a man. All they would see was a one-legged widow's son, and all they would see when they looked at James was a great, lumbering idiot. Didn't matter if the two of them walked 1,000 miles. It wouldn't change anything. When James had finally burned off his rage, he looked around. He had placed all the remaining posts and collected piles of pebbles from the creek bed to fill the gaps around the post bases. He didn't remember doing any of it, but he was exhausted. The moon had nearly completed its trip across the sky. The sun would be up soon. James climbed up into the fork of one of the big trees along the creek and folded himself into the most comfortable position he could manage. He tried to see the thing from his mother's point of view. She never pushed him to do things simply for the sake of tradition or because of others' opinions. She was far too practical for that. If it was only a matter of keeping an eye on Parr, she would have insisted that he go. But she wanted him to make the choice himself. There had to be some other reason. Before he could work out what that reason was, however, James fell fast asleep. All right, it's time for a flashback. Abner was overjoyed to have found a cabin where they could spend the night. He was enjoying his adventure with Common, but he also missed walls and roofs. "How long has it been since anyone used this place?" wondered Common. 50 years, guessed Abner. "And it'll probably be another 50 before anyone uses it again." There you go. That was chapter... Oh, hang on. That was chapter 6. Next up is chapter 7, and I hope you join us. I hope you join us, because chapter 7 is... it's exciting, chilling even. Is it? I don't actually remember. I don't know what chapter 7 is. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you keep watching.